we were talking about the government the other day, I thought we would talk about somebody who actually helped our government out a lot with the executive branch. We're going to be talking about George Washington. With the show of hands, does anybody know who he was? Yes, Lindsay?
He was the first president of the United States.
Oh, yeah. Correct.
Amen.
George Washington was our very first president. What did he do for our nation? Does anybody want to take a guess? Justin?
He chopped down the cherry tree.
Chopped down a cherry tree, yes, he did. Lindsay?
He only served for 2 terms when he could have served for infinite terms.
Very smart, Lindsay. We'll get back to that later. But yes. How did he shape our presidency for today? Well, first thing I want to talk about is his title. What do you guys usually call the president?
This president?
El Presidente?
Mr. Yes, you call him Mr. President. Alright? Now, this is a big deal because when you were in a monarch, you would usually call him Your Highness or something like that. And John Adams, actually, who was our second president, what's it? I'm going to cut this part out. What's that word I'm looking for?
Changed it? Reformed it?
No. Suggested. Okay. Alright, so John Adams kind of suggested that he be called Your Highness. But George Washington did not want that. He wanted to be called Mr. President, which he got from, with other officials, you would usually call them like Mr. Commissioner or Mr. whatever their title was. Alright. Oops. Alright. So the next thing we're going to talk about is his multiple interests. And what was Washington interested in? He was very into interior design. If you guys know anything about him, he lived in Mount Vernon. This is actually the back of Mount Vernon Estates. And then this is the front. And he actually designed the whole inside. He did the interior design for it. He was very into it. He wanted to make sure every little detail was perfect for it. He actually designed the White House. He did not serve in the White House because it was not built before he passed away. But yes, he had a hand in that. He loved art. I couldn't find any of the paintings that he did. He was a very big paint collector. He actually has the 2 paintings that he bought during his presidency. He has them in the White House hanging up. He entertained people. If you know, like Obama, he would, like Barack Obama is our president today, and yes, Justin, and he has people come over and like he entertains certain people. Well, the reason he entertains people is because he wants to get to know the common folk, and he also wants to just hear their thoughts and hear what they want to say. And then he also liked horse riding. This is him and his white horse named Nelson. There's a lot of art of him and his horse. He also used to ride on his horse, like he would ride in a carriage to different cities because that's how they transported back then. They didn't have cars, trains, airplanes. They had horses and carriages. And when he got to the town, before he got into it, he would hop on Nelson and he would make like this grand entrance like he was this prestige person. Alright, so now we're going to talk about terms. Like Lindsay said, how many terms does the president have, Lindsay? 2. Alright, that's correct. Now, when he was president, they did not have this 2-term rule. It was an infinite amount of terms. He only actually wants to do 1 term, but since our society was at a crucial point, he decided to stay in for 2 to help us keep building up. The only president to not serve 2 terms was Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He served 4, which he passed away on April 12, 1945. After he passed away, they then made the 2-term rule. And then the last thing we're going to talk about today is the veto power. The veto power is very important, as it says up there. It should not be overused. The veto power basically says that if the Congress passes something that the president doesn't like, then he has the right to overrule it and abolish what they just said. The veto can be overturned if the Congress has a certain amount of people pass it again. And Washington only used it twice. I was actually looking up a lot of things, and there were people who have used it over 400 times in their presidency. So obviously they didn't learn from Washington at that time. But yeah, there's a great quote that I found on Washington, and I just thought this kind of exemplified him. It says Washington's genius, Washington's greatness lay in his character. It was his moral character that set him off from other men. Washington epitomized everything the revolutionary generation prized in its leaders. He had character and was truly a man of virtue. He had to work for it, to cultivate it, and everyone sensed that. And that was by Gordon Wood. And I like this quote because it just shows who he was, and it explains why he made our country and our presidency such a great thing and how we respect it today.